Hi everyone, so I bought this little fake book storage box. It was only £4, I think it was, for this little one, and I wanted to turn it into my own little spooky book storage box. So first of all, this is an aquarium ornament that I don't use anymore because one of my fish got stuck in it. And what I did was I chopped the back off because it's only made out of a very thin sort of ceramic or resin type thing. It's like really thin. I was able to just trim off the back of it with some little snips, and that's what the book looks like on the inside. And I just stuck that onto the front first with some glue, just using hot glue. And what I'm doing now, which unfortunately the first bit's off screen, is I'm putting a little line of glue around the edge of the book and then sticking on these little white plastic beads on a string that I got from the craft store to add like a sort of beaded frame around the book. It looks better once it's painted, trust me. And I'm just doing that all the way around. So I'm just working my way around the bottom, and then I'm going to do down the last side here. And then once all the beads are stuck down, then it's just a case of trimming off any excess. I used these, if you remember, when I did the frame on the scrying mirror. And it looks quite nice afterwards once they've been painted black, and then you go over to highlight them with a little bit of silver gilding wax. And I'm just making sure they're stuck in place. There was a couple of spots here and there that I had to touch up with a little bit of glue later on, but they were pretty well stuck down. Now the skull itself didn't break evenly when I snipped it, so what I did was filled in the holes with some hot glue, and I also stuffed some paper towel in the top part because the hole was a lot bigger and I wasn't able to fill it properly with the hot glue. So you'll see in a bit I'll put some kitchen roll in the big hole at the top and then put glue over the top of it, and that just sealed it off at the back. And here I'm just making sure it's sealed around the edges because I want it to look like it's coming out the front of the book. I am going to put something around this skull as well, so it's not going to be mega obvious, but I just wanted to make sure any holes, like obvious holes, were filled. So I'm just putting some kitchen roll in there. And that just fills up any gaps. You could use epoxy sculpt if you wanted to, but I didn't want to wait for that to dry because it takes 24 hours to cure. So I did it this way. Could use, I suppose, some filler as well, like what you'd use on the walls of your house, because that stuff dries a bit quicker. But even so, you'd still have to wait for it to dry. So here I'm just using layers of hot glue and kitchen roll. And you'll see as I add more glue, it stays in place. And I was able to smooth it off a bit more by putting a layer of glue over the top and then using the end of the glue gun to smooth the glue down afterwards. And that just gave me a nice base, so I was able to fill in those gaps. I went over the whole thing with 2 layers of black acrylic paint. I wanted to make sure that I covered up the strange pattern that was on the front of these that I thought was hideous. What I liked about these as well is because the sort of coffee design was like a fabric. I found that when this was painted and dried, it got like a sort of leathery texture to the front of the book, where the paint had picked up the texture of the fabric. And then these are some pieces from an old bracelet I used to wear. I've also painted over the skull as well, by the way. But yeah, these pieces are from an old bracelet I used to wear as a teenager, and I've just, because they're made out of pewter, they're very soft. So I've just cut off the little rings that used to hold them onto the chain, and then used these in each corner of the book. Sorry it's slightly off the screen, but you'll see it a bit later on. Unfortunately, when I was filming that day, I didn't have my iPad quite high enough. I also went round and made sure all the beads were stuck on well, because a couple of them had lifted here and there after painting. So there you go, that was a little look at those beads. And then I've got these little mini fake red roses, and I stuck those around the skull in the middle. And I started off doing them in this cross position just to make sure I'd got them well spaced out and nice and even on both sides. I didn't want it to look like there was more roses on one side than the other. And as you can see, it was just a little dab of hot glue, and then just an extra little bit of hot glue here and there to make sure they were nice and securely in place. This one needed extra glue because the leaves were coming off. And I went all the way around like so. Sorry if you can hear like bubbling in the background. I'm currently recording and my fish tank pump's making a noise. And then here I'm just putting a little bit of glue here and there, just making sure those roses are well stuck down. So like this one was a bit wobbly, so I put a bit more glue in place. And then what I needed to do is scratch off the paint off the little gems inside the eyes, because I wanted to keep the red of these little gems. And as you can see, you just use a pair of tweezers just to scrape the acrylic paint off, and it comes off quite easily off these little gemstones. I just made sure I got all the paint off just to make it nice and bright and to show up again. And I liked how the little red gemstones matched the roses. This one, as I was scraping the paint off, I did actually manage to pop the gem out, but just a little tiny blob of hot glue stuck it back into place, no problem. So you can see it's just lifted up here. It's only a little flat back gem that they'd put on the aquarium decoration. What I liked about this skull was all the carving in it, which I'll make show up a bit more in a bit. I liked the detail, that's why I wanted to use it for a project instead of just throwing it away. So as you can see, just a little bit more glue, and just use my tweezers to place it back where it needed to be. Like so. And then once the piece was finished, it looks like this. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.